Wondering how your mindset affects your life? How to bring more energy into your business and life? Millions of people around the world ask these same questions daily. You are in the right place. Learn practices that will help give your life the meaning and success you've been searching for. Welcome to the Charge Podcast, teaching you how to create habits around real goals every day. Practical life advice from those who made it. Here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Chargers, we are definitely in an uncharted time in the history of our world. I wanted to share episodes this month that will make an impact in your business and life during this uncertain time. For a speaker, trainer, and podcast host, my work with organizations are suspended at this time. So I decided I wanted to do something to help the stress and negativity of our society is facing. So I decided to record a webinar called 10 Ways to Be Positive in This Uncertain Time. This free webinar with no opt-in required is available to you to view and share with your friends, family, and colleagues. To watch the webinar, go to bit.ly/Gary Wilbers-webinar Be Positive. The best place would be go to chargepodcast.com to find the link in our show notes at the very top of the page. This is a complimentary webinar to share 10 practices you can do to stay positive and how you can help others during this uncertain time. Each week this month, we will have a great guest lined up that will give you a different perspective on the current situation in our world today. Jeff Schechter, or Shecky, shares some practical advice about how to get in the real estate market to create some passive income to your portfolio. Shecky also shares some wise sage advice he has gained over the years that can not only help you, but how you thrive in this uncertain world. I think you're going to enjoy this podcast, Chargers, so let's roll it. Welcome, Chargers. We're glad you're back again today for another great podcast. I love bringing you different guests each day and each week to really give you a different perspective. You know, we've been doing this show for quite a while, and the thing is, by bringing you different perspectives, it allows you to see different things that may work for your business or may work for you personally. And I love sharing different guests because during this time right now, we need that real ability to make the changes. And I talk to you all the time about we have to make the choice to be able to make those changes. And in this uncertain time that we're in right now, we are the ones that's going to make a difference. So I am so glad you're on this podcast to learn and grow and really decide what action do you need to take in your life. And today we have a guest that's going to give you a perspective that has a lot of history that I'm so excited about. Jeff Schechter is AKA Shecky is what we're going to be calling him here because that's his nickname, has had the entrepreneurial bug his entire life. He started his first business right out of college and over the years has been involved in numerous business ventures. His love for real estate investing began back in 1980s when he rehabbed 5 of his own residences before the term house hacking even existed. Since those early days of torn up kitchens and bathrooms, he's bought and sold many properties and is an active investor today. In addition to investing, he operates a private consulting practice and he thrives on helping people realize their full potential, not just in business and investing, but in all aspects of life. Jeff, it is great to have you on the podcast. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Gary. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I love that name, Shecky, having that nickname that's there. So we're going to go by Shecky on the podcast. You told me it was okay, so we're going to just use that as we move forward. So my first question for you is, I always have a mantra, and it's called Charge. Create habits around real goals every day. And I love having guests tell me, what habit or habits do you think has led success in your life?
Well, I think it's 3 things for me. So number 1 is keep your body moving. I'm sitting in a chair right now, but you know, I do a lot of walking, yoga, and it's really hard to be fully present and productive if you're not physically in decent shape, and nutrition plays a piece of that. The other thing is also helped me a lot is gratitude. and making sure that, we really understand, especially now during these very challenging times, there's still many, many things to be grateful for. And when you are grateful, it just allows more opportunity, more abundance to come into your life. Probably the third piece to that is association. So I really work hard at maintaining relationships with people that are higher vibe, that have positive attitudes, that are out there doing things, that are looking to change the world, that are loving, warm human beings. Because nobody wants to hang out with Debbie Downer. And I think just that sort of combination of that, I feel like has been my cocktail, as it were, for success.
Well, I love those, and we could have a whole podcast just around those three, but we won't, because we're going to take some of them expertise that you have. But we had a little conversation off before we came on to record, and we're in that uncertain time now with COVID-19 that's there, and I want people to realize that. But I also want you to hear what Shecky is telling us. We can change, and by some of the things we do, we make that difference. And I think that's what I want you to really think about as you're listening to the podcast today, how he has done it, because there's roadmaps for us, and we've always come out of this. And for someone, if you're feeling down right now, instead of feeling down, I want you to try to change that. I want you to accept that feeling, but how can you change that? And one of the ways I truly believe this is true, and kind of my first question for you, Shecky, is how do you maintain a mindset of a younger man when you started $1 million business right before your 60th birthday?
Well, I think what I said before has a lot to do with it. I have, in those associations that I mentioned earlier, I've always been friendly with younger people. It's not to say I don't have friends my age or even older, but it just seems to me that I just tend to resonate with people in their 30s and 40s. And so I tend to maintain, again, it's power of association. What is the mindset of the people that you are hanging out with? So if you're hanging out with people that are 20 and 30 years younger than you, a lot of that mindset is going to rub off. So when I looked at, starting this company and got an invitation from my business partner to join force with him, I looked and said, okay, well, just from a business standpoint, it makes sense. And it was like, okay, and I moved halfway across the country to do this business. So this was a completely new start and everything like that. And it's worked out just great. And as we were talking earlier, I've my butt off in this business to get where we are, probably much harder than most people my age are willing to work. But some of the reason I'm able to do that is also because I take care of myself. So again, you got to start thinking in terms of a holistic way to look at that stuff. It's not just like, oh my God, I'm going to drink 12 glasses of water today and that's the magic miracle. And no, I mean, there's a lot of components that go into that.
Yeah, and I think that's the real key. And I loved how you really framed up earlier. It's not just about moving the body. That physical approach is very important, but the nutritional approach is very important. And then with your relationships, it's really about what I call daily boost. How are you giving that gratitude, the boost to yourself? And let's be honest, we always feel better when we're helping someone else. We're working towards ourselves, and we may be working towards a goal, but we're helping ourselves get there. And one thing I think that's really interesting, of course, we're in some of that uncertain time right now, and we don't know the horizon at this point, what it's going to be. But I think one thing I've seen with real estate investing is there's always opportunities. So there's opportunities when sometimes, let's say, the economy does go down some. So I'm curious, how do you define kind of turnkey or that reinvesting to get our audience to really think about that? Because I've had a lot of small business owners that they may have a very good business, but the thing is they're not thinking about the long game, I don't think, sometime about how they can reinvest to really set themselves up for down the road.
Yeah, well, you've done it. I mean, you have a nice portfolio, and I think you're a good model for that. Our business basically serves people like yourself. So they may be white collar, have some disposable income, they may be business owners, but you're right in that many people are more short-sighted. It's all about, can I pay the bills now? Can I make the profit now? Can I do that? And they're not really thinking long-term. Of course, now with coronavirus being everywhere in the news, people are, there's two camps going on. One are thinking even more short-sighted, like how can I get some toilet paper for tomorrow?
Right.
And then there are others thinking, like what you said, there's other opportunities. So our business basically is very simply a complete done-for-you service. We know that whether it's in good times or bad times, owning a good, solid, stable rental portfolio is the kind of thing that's going to generate recurring revenues. It's likely to create some appreciation over the years too, likely, depending on markets. But many people live in markets that are much more expensive than ours. Our company's based in Indianapolis, and we're a big city, at least until the other day, pretty strong economy. And we basically take some of the more rougher inner city product and we fix them up and we put good solid renters in them. We get them in really great shape. We get them rented. We work with a really, really awesome property management team. They're nationally based and have some really amazing processes in place. And we're sort of the boots on the ground for those investors that are busy in their own businesses and their own jobs. And we take care of all the heavy lifting for them so they can just buy the property and move right into a cash flow situation. So to further answer that question, yes, I agree with you. Money can be made in good times and in bad times. And I think, we're seeing obviously an incredibly wild ride in the stock market. I mean, essentially the white collar casino is probably a good word for it. And we are going to see some pretty significant volatility in all markets, including real estate, only because the economy is so topsy-turvy. But we're excited because we're in these lower priced $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 properties. We've never been the guys going for the home run, hitting it over the fences. We're the guys that just step up to the plate and keep taking the base hits. And it's a more conservative approach, but over the long period, really no matter what the economy is doing, we're just fine. I mean, our biggest, my big problem right now is worrying okay, are the tenants going to pay their rents? And, some will and some won't, right? And you may lose a couple months rent, but your property, if it's a $50,000, $60,000 property, is not going to lose a lot of value. And you're going to weather the storm just fine. And so we're very excited about the particular niche that we're in because although we maybe weren't brilliant enough to see this coming, I don't think anybody did, we're thankful that we're in the base hit business.
Yeah, and that's the real key is instead of there's too many people think they're always going to hit the home run.
Sure.
And of course, when trying to hit a home run, normally it takes a big investment to be able to do that. And I think that really plays in and you kind of set it up some is what's the better investment? Real estate? Because I have a lot of entrepreneurs, as I told you, is it real estate or is it an existing business?
You may be surprised by my answer, but if you're in business for yourself, it's likely to be your own business. So if you think about it, talk just in terms of the ability of what that cash can do, whether it's your own cash reserves or you've borrowed it or whatever. If you have your own business and know that you can spend a certain amount of ad dollars, let's just say, and that creates a certain amount of revenue and that creates a certain amount of profit, there's something predictable to that, number one. And number two, the returns that you're able to get if you're running a successful business are likely to be significantly higher than what it would be in any real estate investment. So, like a good real estate investment might be, 10, 11%, really great 12% cash on cash return. Let's just say, for taking out financing.
Sure.
In your own business, if you can spend $1 and turn it into $2, well, that's 100% return. So, it's not to say that you shouldn't be investing, but if you're just comparing apples to apples, your own business is going to win out every single time. And, yes, you should do that. And certainly, yes, once you've generated that 100% return, yes, you want to do things to create passive income. That's where real estate comes in. But, as far as being active, when we're always looking for ways to grow our business and looking at our ad spend and, our cost of operation and how can we improve it. And, we still then go out and buy properties for ourselves, but our number one is to make our business successful.
Well, as I told you before we came on, I've been an investor, and my wife and I, it's not just me, but we started. One of the things when I look back is my first property I bought was back in 1994, but didn't want to buy another one till somewhere early 2000s. And I was like, I wished I would have bought a little more there, but that was at a different time. We were just getting married, but our first property we owned was actually, we moved into a duplex that we owned, and we lived in one side of it, and it was very practical at that time because we didn't have any family or anything else. But the thing that happens, and that's one thing I want business owners to hear, is when you do have that business up and going, because depending until you get it to a certain size, it takes you to be in it all the time. So what you were talking about, the passive income, yes, I still believe in investing in the having 401ks and setting yourself up long-term there. But that's where the passive income, like rental properties, can give you that opportunity that's there available to you. Yep. So that's the thing I think people have to see is you've got to be in for the long game, because the challenge is what happens for a lot of business owners. We're entrepreneurs. So we're kind of like the squirrel. We go wherever, the nut is at that time that we think, and we have a hard time there. But you have to look at the long-term game. And that's what you're talking about investing in property is get your business set up. Then when you're getting that return, put that back in, because then you get some of that passive income. And I'm in that boat right now. Some of our properties, we have a property manager, and I don't have to do anything besides if there's an expense over $500, he calls me. Otherwise, the day-to-day stuff is all taken care of. And at the end of the month, what happens? He sends me a check.
Yeah, and that's the perfect situation. And it's one of the reasons that we've aligned with this particular management company, that we have a very, very strong strategic relationship, and we've developed systems that actually integrate what we do with what they do. But the value of a good property manager, man, that's so much peace of mind and so much, it just creates this. I wouldn't say that there's anything that's 100% passive, because crap does happen. Sure. But it's as passive as you can get, and it's probably as safe as you can get. And like I said, a good property manager is your ace in the hole for sure.
Yeah, that becomes the real key. Now, I'm curious, because we talked a lot of this before and said you started this right before your 60th birthday. So what kind of gets you excited and gets you out of bed in the morning to really tackle the world? Because you're an entrepreneur and you've done multiple things and love the business aspect. But what gets you up in the morning and say, okay, I really enjoy this. This is why I do what I do.
Well, there's a few things. I have always been an entrepreneur, so I guess there's a certain joy in tweaking. So, I'm admittedly a little bit anal retentive. And although you wouldn't be able to tell by looking at my desk, because it's a mess, but any business owner will relate to this, that every little tweak that you make to your operations, they're small cogs, but they are cogs that are connected to all these other cogs that are connected to other cogs. And sometimes a very, very small shift in the way things are done can have huge impact in terms of operations, profitability, et cetera. And so I get a little bit jazzed about that stuff and think, like, what is it that we could do? How could we make things a little bit better? There is a term in Japanese called Kaizen, which I learned way back in like the 80s, when the Japanese car companies all came over to the US and started kicking the Americans' butts. But the term was actually originally used in business terms as related to mass production, to say, how can we take something on our production line, and it literally means continual improvement. So that's one of the things I get jazzed about. The other thing I get jazzed about is really just the art of the deal, people, and, like I just, there's certain, it's like, oh, well, we bought this property just right, and the rehab turned out great, and this investor just did really great with this. There's something about seeing that through that I just get a lot of satisfaction, because we know that what we're doing is twofold, right? It helps us in terms of profitability, and we then go out and have employees, and they have families and great lives and all that other stuff. But at the end of the day, our product is servicing investors, much like yourself and your listeners, to where what we're doing, all this hard work on the back end, is benefiting all their lives and their families and their legacy and all that. So when I start thinking about in terms of that, I don't know, the butterfly effect, right? Like the little bit of stuff that we're doing just ripples out there in such huge ways that I oftentimes have to remind myself of that when things get challenging, because it's, there's really a lot of beauty in that. And I think a lot of people tend to not look at that stuff, and they should be. In whatever walk of life you're in, your job, your business, whatever, is like, what's the ultimate huge benefit that happens as a result of the product or service that you're delivering, right? Because it's very easy to lose sight of that. And I think it's an important thing to stay focused on.
Well, I think you bring up a good point there, Shecky, because I think one of the things people have to realize is right now they may feel like they're in the whirlwind, especially entrepreneurs and business owners, because they're concerned about their people. I always said my hardest part when I owned my company, it wasn't worried about Gary, because I knew if that failed, I'd go on and do something else and I'd be fine. But when I had up one time up 150 employees, when my head hit the pillow, my worry was in my concern for them. And that's one thing I want you to hear is your entrepreneur or your business owner that's running your company, that's their greatest concern. And right now there's a lot of concern there. And I think what you said is very important for the entrepreneurs to hear is look at the big picture. And look at that, why you're doing what you're doing and what gets you excited about that. And yes, we may be in a bump in the road right now, because I truly believe it's going to be just a bump in the road. It may be a big bump though, but the thing is, we're going to come out of this, because the thing is, our economy is strong, and as individuals, and we're seeing positive signs, I think, each day that's out there that we're going to come out of it. But as a business owner, you have to understand you will make those changes, and what you're doing now really makes a big difference long term. So understand why you're doing it. So I truly appreciate you sharing that, because I think right now some of our business owners, somebody needed to hear that message.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that, specific to Corona and having the right attitude for it, we talked about this a little bit before our recording started, is that I think it's incumbent upon all of us as entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs are also leaders. Some of those are by choice. Some of those were forced into leadership just by virtue of having their own company. But it is our responsibility right now during these difficult times to, as leaders, be the light, be the beacon. And I was having a conversation with somebody just the other day, and we all have choices. We have choices in the way we look at it. I loved what you said about just being a bump in the road, because it's a really good example. And the narrative right now across the whole world is this sentence, right? Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to us. Right? I mean, it's a common, normal reaction, right? However, we can change one word in that sentence, and the whole thing has a completely big shift in perspective. So we could just as easily say, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening for us. Because it's still happening, right? There are all kinds of things happening outside of our control. We get to choose that perspective of how things are happening around us. I'm not saying that, look, I'm not super rose-colored glasses Pollyanna guy. I'm not sitting here saying that things aren't going to be challenging, right? They are. But most human beings are, whether they like it or not, they're wired to rise to challenges. Some are better at it than others, but just changing one word sometimes can really make a difference. Like, I think, yes, we've got a fairly big bump in the road right now, but I also think there were a lot of things wrong with the way we treated each other, the way we treated the planet, the way the economy has sort of been structured. There's a lot of corruption, things like that. And we've been overdue for a huge reset. Now, we all look at, like, I'll give you a really good analogy. When you have a big problem and you go and get, say, a surgery, right? You're getting yourself cut wide open. Man, that sucks, right? Like you got, all of a sudden afterwards, you get fixed and, you remove the cancer, or you get the bone straight, or whatever kind of surgery you're having. And then you go through a period of healing. That is not necessarily easy, right? The skin has to close, all the antibodies come in, like you got to take it easy. You got really good nutrition, you got to exercise, you got to do all your rehab. It's a big pain in the butt. But what happens a few months later? You're back stronger than ever. And so I think like I said, it's important for us to look at those word changes and look at those analogies right now. It's now more important than ever.
Yeah, well, great analogy there. It's really true. And I think it's really making us realize that sometimes we need to just slow down. I mean, because people now, we can't connect. And what we found out is we do like connecting with people, but we always did it in the quick, easy way. And one thing I've been doing is, instead of sending a text, I'm actually calling people and saying, how are you doing? Having those conversations, and just having some great conversations with family members, friends, people that I haven't talked to in a while. And I think that really makes a huge difference there. So
yeah, I know it's funny. I've experienced the same. And again, just one word shift. And I've told people, I said, I'm not social distancing. I'm physical distancing.
Yeah, that's right.
I still want to call you. I still want to be social. You and I can still jump on a podcast and with great technology look and smile at each other and have this great energy between us. It doesn't go away.
Yeah, it's just really using the tools and the systems that we have and really staying connected. I love that, physical distancing instead of social, because that's the thing, is you should still be talking to people and having those conversations. Let's talk a little bit about, before we have to go into the recharge round, because I think some people are interested in this and they've looked at investing, but they're not sure. And how could some people, you talk about one of the ways, I've looked at your website, how we can kind of really move up our retirement date by using income property. And for some people, they've never done this investing, and you've kind of laid the groundwork earlier in the podcast. Share with them, really, how could they get started? Because that person that's not ever done it, it's not for everyone. We'll be the first one to tell you that. But, for people that does have some of that excess income that we've talked about with some business owners looking at that long term, how could they really get started looking at those income properties and getting into investing?
Well, I think, there's a lot of ways to do real estate investing. And, you have to decide, first of all, what kind of an investor you want to be. Again, our typical client is someone that either owns their own business or has some extra disposable income. You said it well, even back when you bought your place in the 90s. I mean, the reality is, Gary, it just starts with one. It's not as, most people think like, oh, real estate investing, they think about all these big moguls and all these things are super complex, but they're really not. So a home, whether it's like we're in the smaller residential side, right? So we like to keep things pretty simple. It's a bunch of sticks and systems. It's, they've got hot water heaters and furnaces and roofs. It's finite, right? There's only so many things that go into making a house a good structure, whether it's a house or a duplex, whatever. So if that property is purchased correctly in terms of the right price, it's been rehabbed to exact standards, and all that's documented, and you have a third-party inspector. That way you've got somebody else making sure that everything was done correctly. You necessarily have to trust, just what somebody is telling you. And you look at rents and market rents, and again, good property management, which we already discussed. The set of numbers is fairly finite. Okay, what's it cost me to get into this? What are my taxes, insurance, basic repairs, if I project that out, going to be? Let's be realistic. How much percent does the property management company take off my rent? Usually it's 10, in most cases, 10%. So it means if you have $1,000 rent, they're going to take $100 and they're going to give you 900, right? So if it cost you, $600 a month with, whatever loan you got, or, many of our investors, because we're in lower priced properties, they just pay cash. And, you had told me that, you own all of your properties outright. Doesn't necessarily mean you started that way, but you own all of yours outright. And given the topsy-turvy nature of the world right now, I think you could ask real estate investors all the way down to somebody that would never even think about investing, down to the homeless guy on the street, that would say, if you could change maybe the way you had done things in the past and just owned even one rental property right now, free and clear, would that have been a smart move for you? Right? Well, likely be a lot better than the stock market, likely be a lot better than maybe some other higher risk forms of real estate investing. Like I said, your big exposure right now is whether you're going to go a month or two without some rent. But people are always going to need a place to live, So I don't know if I answered your question. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit.
No, I think you did. I think you gave them a roadmap of things to consider, and that's what I was kind of looking for there. And I think one of the things you have available, you told me you have your podcast too. Definitely, yeah. There's people interested in this. So once you share that, you're welcome to share a website, any information, because I think before we go to the recharge round, let them hear that right now from you.
Yeah, so our company, you can see the thing behind me, it's called High Return Real Estate. Kind of makes sense. That's what we do. And everything is branded to that. So if you put a .com on the end of that, you'll find our website, you'll find properties. Kind of re-answering that previous question, we'll put a financial worksheet on all of the properties that are on our site, and it shows basically all the numbers that I just described. So it's not going to do all these crazy projections, and unlike maybe some of our competitors, we're not making all these future appreciation and here's how rent might go up and all that, because I find that to be really fluffy. And I think you can tell by to me, I'm just a really straight, let's just tell it like it is. Yep. And avoid all the fluff, because I don't think it's meaningful to 99% of the people that are out there. So yeah, and our podcast is called The High Return Real Estate Show, which I do a lot of the episodes. Some I do myself, but many of them I do with my amazing partner, Mr. Jack Gibson, and he's just a great guy and very blessed to have him in my life. And we've had an interesting journey with this business. So and it continues to be more interesting, especially lately. So.
Well, check out the podcast, because if you want to learn more, they're going to share a lot of great information with you. Check out their website, because I know there's some people in the audience that they're interested in that. We'll have it all in show notes, of course, to you, chargepodcast.com, because if you're exercising, doing those moving, getting the body moving right now, you can't write down. So just know that all that information's in the show notes, and just go to chargepodcast.com and you'll be able to reach those. Well, Shecky, let's move over to kind of the recharge round. I told you I have 6 questions I ask every guest, and we'll kind of do a rapid fire on these. But my first one is, you talked about a little bit in the beginning, but about as a younger man, that mindset. But why do you believe mindset isn't so important in your life?
Yeah, I'm a guy I could tell you stories that would, curl your hair. And I've been through some really, really incredible challenges in my life. Lost some people very closely, had some incredible health challenges, more so than the average human. And honestly, people have accused me sometimes of being too positive. And I said, well, I'd rather take that than the flip side to that coin. But I believe that that's served me well. And I know that it's all the stuff that I've been through has made me incredibly resilient. And it's probably one of the reasons why, okay, I look at Corona as the bump in the road, but this too shall pass, right? It always does. And so I don't know, that's just kind of the way I live, and it served me well.
Well, I think I met, someone we're in the same boat, because I get told the same thing. I kind of call myself the positive culture mentor. And what I found though, is even when this first started, I was doing the roller coaster ride like everyone else. But then I came in and I said, what can I do about this? And then I started helping and serving others, and put out a webinar, 10 ways to stay positive in uncertain times. And what it's done, it's changed my whole outlook. I realize that I'm in control of that. So that is the key. And you've talked about that earlier. We control those messages that we send out.
Yeah. And I think the pre-question to understanding how to control that is to just very simply ask the question. If you're following mainstream news now and all the crazy narrative and all that, here's a really good question. Is that serving me?
Right. Very good. How about the one you talked about, energy? You love to get the body moving. You talk about gratitude and some of those things. But when you think about energy, and let's use the example, like this morning, I felt it a little bit. I'll be honest, Friday morning, having a pretty long week. But then when I knew I was coming to do podcast, it was able to bring my energy up. What do you do in those days where your energy maybe is a little lower? What do you do to kind of give it that boost?
Well, I'm a yogi, so I do yoga often, and I find that, obviously the studios are all closed right now, so I'm doing some home stuff, and sometimes just, good breathing exercises. As silly as it sounds, like a walk around the block, you have to, if you're feeling down in the dumps or energy is low, there's all kinds of things you can do to change your energy. It's been proven that, oxygen helps. You can go put your legs up the side of the wall and start draining lymph nodes back down, and, your whole body chemistry just changed. If your brain is working in one direction, and for the musical people out there, I play guitar, piano, drums, whatever, you're sitting there focused on a certain thing in your business, and stop and go play one song on the guitar or the piano, you've completely shifted the use of the nodes of your brain. So there's lots of little tips and tricks and things you can do. You just have to kind of force yourself to do them.
Yep. Great. Thank you for sharing that. How about the number one connection, or maybe the relationship that's made the biggest impact on your life?
Wow. I would say, although it's in the forefront, I mentioned it before, but I've had some really crappy business partners in other ventures. And the business partner that I have now it's like an angel was sent to me from heaven. I mean, this guy is so super ethical, such a great businessman, loyal, hardworking. I feel like, at least in terms of my life right now, that is by far my most important relationship.
Excellent. How about what advice has influenced you the most in your life?
I think that you have to learn probably the best advice I got is don't be hard on yourself. And that can be taken in a lot of different ways. But, as we've discussed earlier, entrepreneurs have a million different things on their plate, and they oftentimes will get down on themselves for not getting everything done. But the reality is we're human beings. We are fallible. And we're only really, multitasking is pretty much a myth. You and I could not be working on a math problem while we're having this kind of conversation, right? So it just can't be done. So we have to just stay focused and be gentle with yourself, be gentle with the people around you, cut yourself some slack, because it's, nobody's perfect, or maybe we're all perfect in our own imperfect way. It's just a choice.
Yeah, great. How about your favorite book, and why do you love it?
My favorite book is actually related to what I just said. My favorite business book, I tend to read mostly nonfiction, is called The One Thing.
Yes.
And it was written by a guy named Papasan, who is Gary Keller of Keller Williams' partner, like, one of the biggest, real estate brokerages in the world. But what's cool about that book is it does allow you to give yourself a break, and it does sort of make you understand that, no, you're not going to multitask, but it allows you to say, like, what's the most important one thing I should be working on right now? And it has really helped me a lot in terms of not just my productivity, but in terms of my focus, because it really gets you dialed in on what's important.
Yeah, I love that book. I've read that one, and we will have that in show notes. So again, if you're doing something where you're not able to get it, we'll have that. And Chris, I have all the information there for you. We're going to end with this last final question. What legacy do you want to leave the world?
The legacy that I want to leave the world is that you have the opportunity to elevate your spirit, to elevate your energy, and elevate your consciousness. Be closer, because we're all divine creatures. And I'm not talking about religion now. It's not a conflict with religion, but I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about living in such a way where we are more connected to our own divinity. And if I could share anything, I grew up in an extremely religious household, and I'm not really religious at all. But I am far more spiritual now than I ever have been. And that would be the legacy that I would want to live. The way that you tread on earth, and the way that you treat others, and being connected to the light, that's really the most important thing we can do for ourselves, for each other, for the planet, for humanity, for the universe.
Well, Shecky, I'm glad we made the choice to have you on the podcast today, because you've made a difference, and somebody that needed to hear the message. We started out, it was going to be about investing, and I think you realize we talked a little more probably about life and life lessons that we all need to hear right now. And I think it's so important, but that can show you that I can tell your servant heart that you have. And I just can't thank you enough for joining the Charge podcast.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your kind words. And thanks for being such a fantastic host. I know, again, we talked about energy, but just being able to have these kinds of authentic conversations, I think, is fantastic and important.
Shecky, if you don't mind, share with them again. I know it's High Return Real Estate. You got a website there. And then again, the podcast show.
Yeah, highreturnrealestate.com and the High Return Real Estate Show. And you can find that link on our website as well. And we're on all the major, podcast distribution networks as well.
So check those out. If you're really interested about investing, looking at it as a business owner, maybe that's something that you've not done, I would highly recommend you do that. I've been an investor myself, as we've talked about on the show. Shecky's been an investor, but make sure you know what you're doing, because there are some people out there that won't lead you down the right path. And that's the thing you have to realize, because if they're giving you all this, that it's going to be too good to be true, normally it is too good to be true. So be smart and work through it. But if you have any questions, Shecky and their group, please check out their website and check them out. I, again, thank you for being on the Charge podcast. Chargers, I love just sharing these messages with you. I tell you, each and every day. And I think Shecky really had it right. It's about our choices that we make each and every day. So the question is for you today, what choice are you going to make for today of getting your one thing done, or deciding to maybe do some investing and maybe look at real estate? Or is it maybe something in your business that you need to make a choice on right now? Go ahead and make that choice and move forward each and every day. Shecky, again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Chargers, we will be back next week with another great show. So come on back, and remember, invite your friends and family, because when you like and share it, we're able to touch more people with the podcast. Charge, go out and make it each day. Create habits around real goals every day. Make it a great day. See you next week.
This podcast is ended, but your life doesn't just stop. To continue your inspiring journey, head over to chargepodcast.com and access all the tools and resources mentioned on today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing with somebody who may also benefit from the advice provided. That's chargepodcast.com. Until next time, charge in business and life.